Today we're going to discuss feedback based on the book How Learning Works, 7 Research-Based Principles for Smart Teaching. Take a second to think about a time when you've had some really bad feedback. Maybe you got far too much information. There was just too many things written on your paper, or maybe the opposite problem. Maybe you weren't getting enough direction. Chances are that feedback wasn't helping you meet the learning objective. Maybe it wasn't the right time for that feedback. Maybe it wasn't specific enough. Maybe it made you feel like this. We're going to review the relationship between checking for understanding, feedback, and student learning. And then we're going to explore some tools and strategies for feedback. Timely and targeted feedback can do so many things to increase student learning. We can increase student learning on performance on future assignments, on students' ability to transfer knowledge to other contexts, and their ability to become independent learners. Student learning. How are we supposed to get there? Well, the first step is we need to check for understanding with an assignment that allows students to practice the skills. We need to give them timely and targeted feedback, and then we need to allow them to repeat those skills and implement that feedback on future assignments. So the first part of this process is a purposefully designed practice. And as a teacher, we need to make sure that our students understand clear and measurable learning objectives. They need to begin with the end in mind, and they need to know what we're expecting of them. As the teachers, we need to make sure that our assignments are focusing on the missing skills and that they're at an appropriate level of challenge for our students. The next thing is teachers need to set students up for success. We need to make students aware of learning objectives, and if possible, we can even provide them with a rubric. If we have examples of those projects, we can even allow students to score those projects on the rubric so they can really understand what we're expecting of them and what skills that they are expected to learn. Once it's clear to students what they're supposed to learn, the next step is they need to receive some feedback, whether that's from a peer or from a teacher. They need some feedback on where they are in terms of the learning objective. Once they receive that feedback, they need additional opportunities to implement the feedback and continue to work towards mastery of that content. Targeted feedback helps students understand where they are in relation to the learning objective. As teachers, it's important for us to focus on 1 to 2 key points. In this case, there is such a thing of too much of a good thing. Too much feedback, it's difficult for students to sort through and understand what the key points are. Too little feedback, on the other hand, maybe leaves students floundering and they're lost looking for what the next steps are. And so we need to find a happy medium to help students move forward to the next steps. The second part of good feedback is that it's timely. That doesn't mean that it's a set time. It means that it's an appropriate time that supports student learning. Perhaps that's immediate, perhaps that's partway through a project, but the key point here is that it's supporting student learning. In general, more frequent feedback is better, as it gives us an opportunity to potentially dispel or eliminate some of those behaviors or beliefs that may be inaccurate before they become ingrained for students. So returning to that core idea of student learning, the most important parts are we need to, as teachers, design appropriate assignments for students that give them opportunities to practice that skill. We need to give them timely and targeted feedback, and then we need to give them an opportunity to continue to repeat those skills so that they can incorporate the feedback and future assignments. Next, I'd like to take the opportunity to discuss some strategies and some specific tools that we can use as teachers to help us give effective feedback and increase student learning. The first thing we're going to talk about is feedback in class from teachers and peers. One of the best resources that you can use for checking for understanding and providing instant feedback is class discussions and that think, pair, and share strategy. So asking a question, then asking students to reflect on that question, pair with another student, and share their thoughts. During that time, the teacher can circulate the classroom and really get a feel for how students are responding. And then they can even choose to do a random call to have students share out to the entire class. Teachers can then provide feedback on those responses to the whole class, individual groups, or maybe even individual students. Another resource that is really interesting is called e-moments. And e-moments are a little collection of activities where teachers can ask students to participate in these activities during class time and then provide feedback based on their performance in these activities. Students really like these activities because they're interactive. Some of them are more like games, and so they're definitely worth taking a look, and I have the link there for you. The next thing that's worth mentioning is watching for patterns and identifying where common misconceptions are. This could be things that happen during class time. It might be things that happen as assignments or activities are being graded. And then these issues can be addressed as a whole class or with groups, depending on what that individual issue is. One of the last strategies or ideas I'd like to mention before jumping into some specific resources is helping students to reflect on their learning and that whole process of metacognition, and then helping them to determine where they're at in this process and then what they can do with that feedback. And so giving them an opportunity to do that, perhaps it's its own separate assignment, or maybe it's just an opportunity in class to think about it and then share out, but giving them that opportunity to consider your feedback and then how, or their peers' feedback, and consider how that's going to be utilized moving forward. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some specific strategies or resources that you can use tomorrow. The first one I want to start with is called Plickers. And Plickers is really awesome because you can create quizzes or surveys that have multiple choice or true-false responses, and then students can respond with their card. Let's take a look and you can see a little how this works. So this is Plickers. And the way that Plickers works is students get these cards, and each card is unique. You can see every student has a different card. And on the card, there are letters. So it would say A, B, C, D. And so depending on which letter they hold facing the ceiling, that's how your smart device records their response. And so you would need an iPad or a cell phone to be able to collect their responses, but then it will show the responses either and or on your smart device. And then also if you would like to display them through an LCD projector, you can also have the students see, it won't show the individual responses of each student, but it'll show the class responses. And so they can see the class responses and how people are feeling about whatever that is. And this is a great way for you to visually get a look and see where students are at, and then provide some instant feedback to the class or maybe some specific individuals. And since you know how each student responded, you could even ask specific individuals to share out on their opinion and help the class to come to a consensus that way on their own, as opposed to just giving them the answer. Pick Me is the next one that I'd like to share. And earlier I talked a little bit about how I really like to use random call. And the reason I like random call and choosing a non-volunteer is that we really can get a better feel for how all of the students feel, aside from maybe just the really confident ones. And so using a random call, we can help to keep students engaged And then we can also really make sure that we're getting an accurate feel and checking for understanding for the whole class. Okay, so this is Pick Me, and Pick Me is an app that you can get on either your iPad or your iPhone, and you can upload your class list or you can type it directly in there. You can use it to essentially choose a student's name. Once the name has been chosen, you can choose to take them off the list and keep them out of the rotation, or you can leave them in. I prefer to leave them in because it keeps them continuing to stay engaged, knowing that they might get called on again. The next feedback resource I want to discuss is Google. And Google has a lot of functionality that can help teachers provide feedback. And so they have Google Docs and Google Sheets and Google Forms and Google Slides. And so all of these can give teachers opportunities to give feedback and even give students a place or a way to share their learning with the teacher. And so your assignments could be through this format, which makes the feedback component really easy because we can do that digitally anytime, anywhere. This is the Google Training Center for the Google Educator Level 1 training. You can see the different modules here: engage in professional growth and leadership, increase efficiency and save time. And each of these modules has a very specific little learning objective, and it teaches you to use the different tools that Google has to offer. And I found the Google tools to be extremely beneficial in helping me give students feedback. Doctopus is the next tool that I'd like to share with you, and it's an extension or add-on to Google Docs. And the benefit of using Doctopus is that it allows you to efficiently manage and share documents through the Google Drive. And so teachers can set up sharing privileges, and you can decide as the teacher whether or not you want the other students in the class to be able to see or comment, or if you'd like the students to be able to collaborate on one document. You have all of the power as the teacher to determine how you want that assignment to work and how that matches up to your learning objective. Doctopus runs through Google Sheets as an add-on, and so if you were interested in downloading the add-on, you just go to your add-ons and you say get add-ons, and then you would search it here and you would add it to Google Sheets. And so when you do Doctopus, you open a Google Sheets, you go to add-ons, you select Doctopus, and then here on the right-hand side, it's going to take you through the whole process of setting up that sharing and folder process. And so you can see it's already set these things up for me. I blacked out my students' names and email addresses, but you can kind of see how things are set up. The folder key and those kinds of things are just for identification purposes. But like this particular project, some students are working as individuals, some students are working as groups, and so they have unique group names there. And so that's how Doctopus knows which students have edit privileges on which documents, and then all of the other students have comment and viewing privileges so that they can help their classmates peer review. You can score students on a rubric, and you can do it multiple times, and more feedback is definitely better. And so Doctopus will keep track of all of that feedback. And so here's one where it kind of shows, and my comments are here, and they're kind of cut off because some of them are longer, but you can go in and see those comments, and then you can choose to email those comments out to students, and it will add the rubric to the bottom of their assignment. This is an example of some student work that is shared through Doctopus as a Google Doc. And so in reading through this, you can see right here that the student forgot to add a space in between the two sentences. So I can select that text, and then when I come over to the side, you can add a comment. And so I can say add space. I guess I don't need a capital, space. And then I click comment. And then students can or will get a notification saying that I left them a comment. Google Forms is a great tool to create quizzes or have students submit responses or even to create surveys. Here's Google Forms. Google Forms is a way for us to collect information, and so this is actually a test that I recently gave in my Sustainable Ag class, and so you can see the title here. It's really easy to add questions. You just click on the little plus sign, you type your question here. You can choose, do I want it to be multiple choice or check boxes or drop down, short answer. There's even a way where you can set it up to be a grid and have a scale, even if you wanted to do your rubric through here. You can add response options here. You can add an other, so they can put in a free response. You can make the questions required. You can duplicate them. There's a lot of options here. So then students respond to the quiz via the link that you provide them. And you can email it, or you can use the link shortener to make that easy for students to get to. But with the really neat thing here is on the responses tab. Forms will go through and give you graphic representations of each of the questions. And so this first question was about which class period the students were in. And so you can see the distribution of the number of students from each class period that took the quiz. We also asked them to let us know how they studied for the quiz, and so we can see what their most preferred study methods are here. Then as you move through the quiz, you can look at each question individually as well, and so this one had 84% with the correct answer. This one you can see, wow, there's really a large distribution of responses here, and so that's probably something we need to look at. So we can download these responses into a Google Sheet, and that will give us some more flexibility. So let me show you what that looks like. Here's the Google Sheet. You can see that there's a timestamp of when the students took the quiz. Their questions are here along the top, and there's the responses to each of their questions. So since I've already activated it, the grades are here at the bottom. I've blacked students' names out here, but you can see class period. You can see the total number of points they got on the quiz. You can see their percentage on the quiz. It even highlights the students' scores and names in red, or responses in red if they got those incorrect. This last resource is called Kahoot. And Kahoot is really a hoot to play. So teachers create quizzes or discussions or surveys, import pictures and videos. And what's really neat about Kahoot is a game type environment that's interactive and fun. And so after you ask each of the questions, it shows the results, and then teachers can provide feedback on what those results were. Let me show you how this works. I actually opened up an existing Kahoot and I added a person. This here is a sample of what students would see as they're playing Kahoot on their device, and they could play with a Chromebook or an iPad, or they could also play with a smartphone as well. So let me show you. So it's going to give them a second to read through the question. It's going to give them some options here, and then they will select their response here. So I chose the incorrect answer to show you what's going to happen. But the correct answer here was the red triangle, which is ribosome. And so you can see it notes that with a check mark. And so this would show on the teacher's LCD projector. And so after all the students have had an opportunity to respond, the entire class can see in a graphic representation that this was the correct answer. It's marked with a check mark, and each of the bars will show how many students responded to that one. And so there's only one person signed up for my Kahoot, and so there's only one response showing here. But this is a great opportunity for you to look at what the other responses were, and then talk through those other responses, or have students talk through those other responses about why those were incorrect answers. So in conclusion, feedback can do some really tremendous things for student learning. Let's review those really quickly. We can increase performance on future assignments. We can help students be able to transfer their knowledge to other contexts within the course and just within life. And then we can help our students transition into becoming independent learners. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to review that relationship between checking for understanding and then taking that next step of providing students feedback, then helping them to continue to engage in future assignments that enrich their learning. Hopefully some of these tools and strategies will be useful to you. And the links are always here in the presentation for you to find those. The primary reference for this presentation, the How Learning Works book, 7 Research-Based Principles for Smart Teaching, and I certainly recommend this resource as a good read. Thank you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this presentation on feedback.